about a dozen years at Microsoft, doing mostly product. Frankly, probably before product was even called product. I'm old enough to say that. The discipline was really just kind of forming and getting started at that point in time from my perspective and maturing. Had really interesting experiences. Everything was B2B, worked in a pretty technical space at Microsoft, kind of on the server business for most of my time there. And then kind of did a little quick segue over to Microsoft.com, led a product team there that was responsible for the homepage and download center and a few relationship marketing programs. And that's kind of where I got the consumer bug, and then got connected up with the role at Nordstrom. And started in there and was fortunate enough to lead the product team for Nordstrom.com, the mobile web, desktop, iOS and Android experiences, and was part of a pretty significant digital transformation there. And similar over the last couple of years at RetailMeNot with their digital consumer-based experiences. And so, you know, in talking about this session, James and I spent a little time thinking about what might be interesting. And I sort of mentioned one of the things that historically in my career that I think has always been a little bit challenging. And James, we can move forward to the next slide. I don't think I can control it. Thank you, though. James and I were talking a little bit about just kind of product strategy and what it is and what it's not. I've been part of a lot of teams and initiatives over the years where we did a lot of work, meaning there was a lot of stuff on the roadmap. There was quite a bit of delivery. It always wasn't clear what exactly that work on the roadmap correlated to at a strategic level. And so, you know, it's a word that's kind of thrown around a lot, strategy. It's a big fancy word. What does it mean, particularly as it relates to product strategy? And I thought it might be interesting to spend some time talking about that today. And at least for me, it was something that was a bit of a mystery years back, and trying to demystify that a bit, or at least how I think about demystifying it. And, you know, today, a couple of questions that I hope we can answer. You know, I'll spend a little time on why it matters right now. And then what does a product strategy really look like at the end of the day? And good, bad, and different, how do we sort of think about that? Not that it's a totally binary conversation, but why it matters, just to sort of touch on that for this one moment. For me, what's really important about having a strategy is, without it, as I like to say, what is on your roadmap as a product manager is activity that doesn't necessarily accrue to something at a strategic level. And why that's so important is, you know, every product team at the end of the day, when I say product, I'm talking about product development team, engineers, product managers, designers, data scientists, you know, just pulling together a squad of people, 5, 6, 7, 8 individuals, pretty quickly you're at $1.5 million, $2 million to spend as it relates to just a little small discrete product team. And so why having a strategy matters is the work has to accrue to something at a strategic level to get funding, to get senior management bought in, to get your management bought in, et cetera. And so I think I've always found that when you can connect the work to something more strategic, it's a little easier to get buy-in with your stakeholders throughout the organization, with your management, et cetera, et cetera. So for me, it's a lot of why I think this is kind of an important conversation. All right, James, let's fly to the next one. All right, all. So product strategy in a nutshell. I kind of think of this as really 3 primary components that lead ultimately to you know, what we also commonly refer to as a roadmap. And the first point, and probably the most important, is I think most strategies, good strategies, are data-driven, meaning there's insights, quantitative insights that actually inform and impact that strategy and what it's going to look like. I will say, as a caveat, oftentimes when you're starting in a role, I find when I'm starting in a role, typically there's limited data. You know, there's some data, maybe there's none. Um, you're not sure of the validity of it. You weren't sort of part of the journey. And so there's just about always data gaps at the get-go when you're starting in a role or starting in a new job. And so I think it's okay to just kind of recognize that and say, we're not going to have perfect data from the jump. I think it's really important to have an aspiration, or what I kind of call a product mission, what you're really trying to achieve at a macro level. We'll spend a little time on what that looks like, just as we'll spend some time on the data part of the equation. And then a series of focus areas or themes that accrue or drive that aspiration or mission. And what do I mean by just like a focus area? Removing friction is a focus area. Personalizing is a focus area. There's a lot of things that you can do to personalize. There's a lot of things you can do to remove friction with a digital experience. And those are all the tactics that are part of the roadmap. And so if you kind of think of this in a little bit like a waterfall, the roadmap should align to the various focus areas, which in theory accrue to the mission. And hopefully all of it is based on a series of quantitative insights, or at least some quantitative insights. So hopefully that makes sense, and we can sort of move on and get into the nuts and bolts of this a bit. All right, so probably in this presentation, the most important part in some ways is the insight piece. And what I've tried to do, and we can go to the next slide, James, is I've basically tried to take some of my experiences from Nordstrom and sort of genericize it a little bit, so I'm not giving away any state secrets from my time there, and no one tries to sue me back in Seattle. But I think why I thought this would be interesting is because Nordstrom is a pretty pure consumer commerce experience. Everyone can kind of relate to buying a sweater or going to Amazon or what have you. It's just pure digital commerce. So I thought it would be kind of interesting and applicable for everyone today as part of the conversation. And kind of what this slide is really about is really two things. First of all, just kind of the scope of what I worked on at Nordstrom. There was the website itself, and I always think about that in terms of both mobile web and desktop, really very different experiences. We had an iOS app and an Android app, and then we had these things called stores, and we had a lot of app-based experiences for our customers in stores. And so for me, that part of the journey was quite new and quite interesting, working on digital experiences for our stores. And at the top, you'll see here, it says the 80-20 rule. And this is kind of first data point or first insight that's really interesting. And I didn't know it when I started, kind of figured it out and learned about it over my journey at Nordstrom. But 20% of our customers at Nordstrom really generated 80% of our revenue. Those are the folks that really paid the bills. And over time, we decided to focus a lot of our product development efforts on those customers that really move the needle. So kind of keep that in mind, that little 80-20 rule when you think about this, because a lot of what you're going to see going forward is really tailored primarily to what I refer to as kind of those best customers that really generated most of the sales and paid the bills at the end of the day. So we'll go to the next one, James, too. Thank you. A few more data points about kind of best customers, and I want to spend a little bit of time talking also just kind of about new customers too, because every business does need new customers. One of the things that on my journey that I came to realize our very best customers did typically shop across channels. And what I mean by that is the really good customers tended to use our app, whether it was our iOS or Android app, and they tended to use the desktop experience. They were kind of the power shoppers. Little less so with mobile web. They also shopped in stores. So this notion that, kind of, hey, we use one device or channel was fairly flawed at the end of the day. So it was kind of an important concept to grok. Our good customers who visited us, they really expected a level of personalization. They wanted brands and products that were tailored to them, things that were interesting and relevant to them, as opposed to just kind of, generic stuff that was tailored for anonymous customers. All of our best customers, I like to use this term kind of direct load, typically a new customer comes to you through something like SEO, or maybe it comes from an influencer. But your best customers are typically coming to you by opening your app or typing in Nordstrom.com to a browser or showing up to your store. So that customer is looking for a very different experience than an anonymous customer who's coming to you for the first time through, as I mentioned, something like SEO or potentially through an influencer, what have you. So kind of moving through this, one of the other things that we kind of learned is trips or visits, whether they're physical trips to stores or digital visits to any of our website or our iOS or Android apps, trips were a good thing. Lifetime value of customers grew through trips. And so having engaging content to try and drive those trips was a really important part of what we were trying to do. A little bit of a quick segue, a few more data points, a little bit about new customers. And this is really important from my perspective, something I didn't understand when I started at Nordstrom. New customers typically are looking for something very different. As I like to say, they're often, term I kind of like to use, spear fishing, meaning they're looking for a specific brand of a specific pair of shoes at that moment. And it's not the time to engage them with a lot of editorial, with a lot of personalized content. It's let them get what they're actually there to find. And so that's a very different experience than kind of what I refer to as a direct load experience, a customer that you have a relationship with that maybe is looking to sort of browse and explore and discover, as opposed to that customer, that new customer, who typically is kind of doing that spear fishing. They're looking for that specific product. They just kind of want to buy it and get through the transaction. So James, we'll keep plowing through this, and folks, feel free to pause or jump in or shout, ask a question. And kind of the last piece of kind of the data or the insights piece of this that I think was really interesting was, as we got a little bit more mature at Nordstrom, we started to do some work around lifetime value of our customers. Our data science team did. And one of the big aha moments was we discovered that customers that were online only, meaning that just purchased digitally, maybe we did a few $100s annually with. In-store or physical store customers typically spent a little bit more money, but then when we actually started to connect online and physical, we were able to grow the lifetime value of that customer in a very exponential way. And that was an interesting finding, because as a product team, it really shaped how we started to think about connecting physical and digital experiences and how important that really was if we were going to grow lifetime value with our customers. Another way we started to kind of think about experiences, we looked at sort of these core features. Everyone knows what alterations means. You buy a pair of pants, it's a little too long. You need to get the pants shortened. Or BOPUS at the right, buy online, pick up in store. Most of us are quite familiar with that, given the times we're living in. But all of these various experiences, they exponentially helped us grow lifetime value with specific customers. And so why this is all important, as a product team, as an engineering team, just a product development team at large, you're trying to figure out, what do you want to do? What do you want to work on? And so by understanding how lifetime value or other relevant metrics are impacted by your investments in specific features or experiences, helps you shape where you want to go with your roadmap. And again, it's kind of an organic process. These 3 slides, I sure didn't have all these insights or this data on day one when I started at Nordstrom. Over the course of a couple of years, all of this kind of pieced together like a puzzle. So to some extent, you just kind of do the best you can with what you have. But trying to weave data, trying to weave something quantitative into why you're doing what you're doing is really important at the end of the day. If you're going to continue, as I like to say, to get funding, to have support for your work, it's knowing that you can correlate it to outcomes like this. All right. we'll keep plowing through here. So kind of the second part of the strategy conversation, I sort of reference this as an aspiration. Some people might call it a product mission. Super simple, every customer, every day. And I'm not talking about all of the customers that Nordstrom had. What I was really talking about was the best customers that drove 80% of the revenue. And realistically, taking all of our customers and getting them to visit Nordstrom on a daily basis, whether it was digitally or physically, wasn't going to happen. We weren't Amazon. We didn't have that type of relationship with our customers. But with some of our better customers, they did visit on a weekly basis, or sometimes a couple times a week, or as I like to say, the real power shoppers that we had relationships with maybe came every day. It was sort of a form of entertainment. They'd get online at 7 at night and just kind of browse for 20 minutes and see what was new. So we really kind of felt like we knew trips, visits were something that we could monetize and grow lifetime value with our customers. And so getting focused on, hey, we wanted to take those best customers and get them to visit on a daily or maybe a couple times a week basis if we were going to really sort of grow and nurture those relationships over time. So think mission, think aspiration. That's kind of what I'm talking about here. James, we'll keep moving through. And so here's where we sort of get to the nuts and bolts of what I kind of like to refer to as strategy. This is all real. I haven't brought a lot of quantitative points per se, but how we were going to engage those best customers, every customer, every day, we felt like we needed to really focus on 4 primary thematic areas. And the first one kind of at the top of this page, and this in many ways is the nuts and bolts of the strategy, inspiration. And what do I mean by inspiration? If you're really interested in fashion and you're a great customer of Nordstrom, you're interested in fashion editorial, meaning, hey, what are the summer trends for, bathing suits and shorts and tops? What are kind of the latest hot brands? Give me something interactive where I can sort of mash up outfits and pull together a look that I'm interested in. So giving content, providing content to the customer that provides some inspiration. And again, just what I mean by inspiration is, people that care about fashion, that are interested in fashion, kind of want to read about it, want to engage with it, etc. It's not just about, hey, I'm trying to find a sweater and get in and get out with these very good customers. Kind of the second piece of the equation from my perspective, just they get me. What do I mean by that? If I'm spending hundreds or thousands of dollars a year with you as a Nordstrom customer, you should know something about my interests. If I buy X brand, you should be putting 7 or 8 brands that have affinity to X brand in front of me. It's showing that you understand the taste, the likes, what that specific person is interested in, to really make that discovery process much more efficient, much more easy. Kind of the third piece of the equation, I kind of refer it to connection. This was because we really had physical stores at the end of the day. And knowing that insight that I provided earlier, that when we got customers shopping across digital and physical, we tended to grow our relationships with them. So it was really important to create digital experiences that connected customers to store-based experiences. And so maybe you bought something online, you bought a pair of trousers and you wanted to schedule an appointment for alterations so you didn't have to wait in line on a Saturday at a Nordstrom store. Or maybe you were interested in pulling together an outfit for a special occasion and you had something in mind and you wanted to connect with a stylist and interact with that stylist digitally. So a lot of what we were focused on was how do we sort of take digital experiences and where appropriate, connect it to the physical, to humans where appropriate, or sometimes to something as simple as a return. You bought something online, you can return it in store. Quite often that customer would buy something else while they were in the store, which is why we were glad to encourage those returns at the stores. And then kind of finally, the really sort of, the most basic and simple piece of this, just make it easy. Digital Commerce 101, fast. Make sure your website's fast. You can monetize that. You can make tens of millions of dollars off of page speed. If you get really rigorous about it, it's by and large engineering driven, but it's a really important investment from an engineering perspective. And take clicks out. Again, this is really basic stuff, but it never changes. And what I mean by, making it easy, do you need to go through 20 fields to check out, or can I do it in 6 or 7 or 2 or 3 or what have you? How do you just make the experience really efficient for customers at the end of the day? And so these 4 themes, were very practically just kind of what we wanted all of our work, meaning, the product details page product manager had a roadmap, or the my account product manager had a roadmap. We were trying to make sure that the activity on the roadmap accrued to these focus areas or these themes, whatever you'd really like to call it. And what we were trying to do with this was actually create a way where we could show that the work on various roadmaps accrued to something that was more strategic, that was driving lifetime value, that was aligned with what we understood about our customers. See, kind of a couple of questions here just about a good resource for product roadmaps. There's a number of SaaS products that are out there that you can use for road mapping. My personal bias is I kind of think it's overkill, and is really something that I can share offline, and I'm glad to follow up with anyone who wants to chat about some of these things. But I think creating a roadmap, it's just a snapshot in time, and I think we tend to overcomplicate it sometimes in the discipline. And what I mean by that is, if you're running 2-week sprints, maybe you have 6 sprints during the course of the quarter, and you're just really trying to chunk up the work at the end of the day and what you're going to deliver as part of each sprint. So I think there's kind of lots of ways to go at it. And we can keep going here. This is kind of a couple of examples. When I talk about those focus areas that we just reviewed, or the themes, whatever you'd like to call them, kind of the inspiration focus area. I'd like to say I pulled these together. I didn't. They're just kind of some of our design team's old handiwork that we used. But you can sort of look here, for someone who's really interested in fashion, what we were trying to do here was just kind of create a shoppable experience, do some brand storytelling, show an interactive way for a customer to kind of create a look or an outfit, where they could sort of scroll through and change what they were seeing in the specific outfit. So these are all kind of things that would be tailored to a customer who is a little bit more of kind of what I refer to as a fashionista, someone who's kind of already got a relationship with you, is interested in fashion, and is looking to engage with content of this nature, if that makes any sense. It's kind of what I mean by inspiration. Keep going to the next one too, James, just a couple quick examples of this. Here I was talking about kind of the concept of gets me, or the concept of personalization at the end of the day. If you kind of look here, you can see the person's name is Sasha at the top of the page. We should have some brands and outfits and other things that are of interest to her. We've allowed her to create a profile. She potentially has children, a significant other, and allowed to have sort of her family preferences influence that profile. And then, as I was saying, on the far right, there's kind of the looks mashup capability that we created, where you can take a seed item and through machine learning, go ahead and actually, what are the tops, what are the shoes, what are the backpacks that actually, match the pair of jeans. So helping the consumer actually create a little bit of an outfit or a look. And so when I talk about things like personalization or Nordstrom gets me, this is all we mean. Again, it's not particularly fancy or high-minded, but it does deliver value, and it's something that you can monetize for the consumer. James, let me pause here too. I know we're where we are on time, but to see if people have questions, or if we want to just keep going through, you feel free to guide me.
Sure. I mean, yeah, folks do have questions. We could finish with the content and then have people react to that and ask questions.
Great. We can just, I'll try to be quick with this.
Yeah, no worries.
A couple more examples with personalization. Kind of the notion of a personalized header. Nordstrom had a loyalty program. So what's your relationship with the loyalty program? Meaning how many rewards do you kind of have at that moment? It's kind of simple A/B testing. When you remind the customer that they have a few dollars burning a hole in their pocket, they'll typically be more inclined to spend it if they realize they actually have it. Something like early access to fashion, our best customers, we gave early access to super desirable product and brands. If you wanted the Yeezy sneakers and you were one of our better customers, if you were fairly progressed in the loyalty program, we would make those sneakers available to you before the masses. And so creating some differentiation for our best customers at the end of the day. And then checkout placement, you have a reward or a note and, hey, we're reminding you that you can actually use that as you make this purchase. So personalization kind of exists in many forms, but this is really what I'm getting at. Keep going, James. And we'll get to the questions. The Connects Me theme, this is really a very interesting topic. When you're a retailer, your stores often have inventory. It's not all at a distribution center. And so there's a very big data science challenge around figuring out what inventory should be in what part of the country, and allowing the consumer, if they want it to actually be shipped to the door, they can ship it to their door. If they want to go pick it up at a store or pick it up at some sort of Dropbox location, it's a really interesting sort of logistics challenge and a conundrum, but something that obviously Amazon has taught the world you can differentiate through. And so we invested quite a bit in allowing the customer to actually kind of shop their local market inventory. So, if you're in Austin, Texas, and we have a mall called The Domain here, and The Domain has a Nordstrom store, that customer can actually see the inventory that's at the Domain store if they need to potentially get something right away or are interested in doing, kind of a quick shopping trip. James, we can keep going through to the next one. A little bit more on Connects Me. This is kind of an interesting experience that we created with stylists. And what I mean by that is, a lot of our high value customers actually had relationships with stylists, and we created a capability through text and this digital outfitting capability where a stylist could mash up an outfit, send it off to their customer, go back and forth on what they like, didn't like, and have the customer just kind of buy it in a fairly seamless way. And again, these were all the types of features and experiences that allowed us to sort of grow the lifetime value with those specific customers. And that's kind of why we invested in these experiences. They sure weren't for the masses. Every customer is not going to be interested in working with a stylist, but often your very good customers were, many of your high value ones. So again, tailored and focused on a lot of those best customer experiences. Onward, back to the easy piece here. A lot of what you can see, like in the middle vignette, we have a relationship with you, so we're pre-populating your size in the SKU selection field. So simple gesture, but something that you can monetize. It's just taking friction out of the experience. Hey, you've bought a bunch of stuff from us. We kind of know what your sizes are. We're going right there and pre-populating it so you don't have to search through. Taking clicks out with kind of buy now experiences. Everybody's familiar with that with Amazon. Most other retailers, though, obviously haven't focused as much on it. So again, it's basic stuff, but how do you take friction out of the experience and allow the customer to just get through it as quickly as possible when that's their objective, when they're trying to make a purchase? And we can, last but not least, basic things around order history, tracking orders, canceling orders. These were all things that you really couldn't do on our arcane website if you go back to 2015. but it's really intuitive stuff that customers expect. And so again, not rocket science, but you can't sort of skip the basics, as I like to say. I think that gets us back to home. So I know that was quick, it was fast. I apologize for moving so quickly through this, given some of the time constraints, but you know, hopefully this kind of all accrues. There was a bunch of insights that we sort of used to ultimately drive what our mission was going to be, to get our best customers to engage every day or almost every day with us. And we knew through those 4 themes, if we focused on those 4 areas of interest that we talked about, that our testing experiences showed us over time that those were features and experiences that we could monetize with those best customers. And so let me pause there, and hopefully this all makes some sense. I'm glad to take questions and go as deep as folks would like to go.
Yeah, no, that's great, Josh. And yeah, if folks want to go ahead and ask a question to Josh based upon some of the things that he shared, feel free to do that. We also have some comments in the chat, so feel free to either put something in the chat or feel free to share you know, your question live.
Jim, do you want to stop sharing your screen so we can bring everyone's faces back up? And yeah, if you guys want to unmute yourself to ask a question. Otherwise, I know there was a couple that came through the chat already that we haven't answered yet. One was from Sherry, who asked Josh, which was most impactful, alteration, style board, sales, BOPIS, looks, or the iOS app?
Well, they were, without getting into all of the proprietary data, which I can't and shouldn't do, I think the biggest impacts were typically when you looked at stylist relationships. It was a very small number of customers, but it was something that was very lucrative and something that we could monetize. You just had to focus it on the right customers. I think downloading an app, you know, when a customer, this is almost a universal premise. When someone goes and downloads your iOS or your Android app, they're screaming at you, we are trying to have a relationship with you. And that is something you can monetize. And so encouraging that, you know, sort of graduating customers to your apps, all of those things, the reason they're on the slide is because they all grew lifetime value. Even something as simple as BOPIS, you know, it sounds kind of mundane to people, you know, but simply buy online, pick up in store. If you think about it very intuitively, you're in a store, you're picking something up. What's the likelihood that you might buy something else? It's fairly significant without getting into the specifics of the data. And so, you know, some of this stuff, you know, just goodness comes from it.
That's awesome. One other question we had, and I want to make sure we answer because it came from the breakout room. So I'm excited that that conversation spurned further questions. Terrence asked, you moved from Microsoft to retail. Was it difficult? Would it be difficult to move to another industry now? Talking about your experience going from Microsoft to retail.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think, you know, what I've discovered, I'll tell you all a quick little story. The guy who hired me at Nordstrom, he had come over from Amazon, and he was just someone who'd spent about 17, 18 years at Amazon, and really was someone that valued what I like to call sort of non-traditional backgrounds. You know, he wasn't looking for everyone to have the same cookie cutter set of experiences that he brought to the table or other people brought to the table. And so the reason I bring this up is, you know, I think when you go out and interview and when you talk to different companies, some of them are, oh my God, you know, I'm Neiman Marcus and I'm going to hire somebody that, you know, has 10 years at Nordstrom or Macy's or Saks Fifth Avenue, and they're just kind of focused on that. You can't really move that person if that's the mindset that they bring to hiring. but I do think there are companies, and why you should explore these things. There are hiring managers and there are companies that are kind of interested. And I readily admit, I sort of bias towards this. I like people that don't sort of have cookie cutter backgrounds. You tend to get groupthink when everybody's sort of from the same world, same place. So personally, you just kind of have to find companies and hiring managers that are interested in having a diverse set of backgrounds, whether it's functionally or personally per se. Hopefully I answered that.
That's great feedback.
Does anyone want to ask a question? You can pop in and ask. If you can't unmute yourself, raise your hand and I can unmute you, I believe.
Hi, this is Elizabeth. Can I ask a question?
Yes,
sure,
please
go
do.
for it.
So you talked a lot about lifetime value. I was just wondering, for like the product managers on the ground, were there in-between metrics for the PMs on your team that then laddered up to lifetime value? I guess something as a more junior PM, not necessarily like a CPO. Some of the challenges I've seen is that our CPO might set like a very high level metric to hit like lifetime value, but then your role is to figure out how to get metrics for the projects you have that ladder back up to that.
Yeah, Elizabeth, really good question. And I think, every product manager on a day-to-day basis, there's usually kind of some short-term metrics that we're all trying to drive. And, I always like to use the example of kind of a product details page, because just about everybody's familiar with that in their day-to-day life. Just about everyone on this call probably shops at Amazon and knows what a product details page looks like, where you add to cart. And I always think every product manager at the end of the day, every really product development team at the end of the day, if you're responsible for that product details page, there's a primary metric on that page, and it's pretty straightforward. It's called add to bag. You're trying to give the customer the confidence to add that product to bag, okay? And how you do that is through images, through video, through words on a page, through recommendations, etc. And all you're really trying to do with all those experiences on the page is help the customer actually have the confidence to add that item to bag. And so to bring this back home to your question, Elizabeth, for me, add to bag is the primary metric, but there's a whole bunch of secondary metrics, meaning what did the customer engage with on the page? Did they click on the images? Did they watch the video? Did they scroll down and read the product details? Did they click on some alternate recommendations? And so through all of that, through all of those secondary metrics, meaning what they engaged with on the page, you can start to kind of piece together the puzzle of what really got them to add to bag. And an example of that that I love, because we never really focused early in our days at Nordstrom on our image gallery, meaning on that product details page, what are the qualities of the imagery, really investing in those technologies. And the first time we started to do some testing there, we saw that it really resonated with customers, that improving the quality of images so you could really see the almost the texture or the fabric allowed that customer to have more confidence to add to bag and potentially buy the product. And so I really encourage people to kind of think about their portfolio. If it is that product details page, have your primary metric, but then understand the secondary metrics that are part of the experience that drive the add to bag outcome you're trying to get to. Hopefully that makes sense.
No, that's helpful. Thank you.
That's great.
What else, folks?
Other questions of folks who are out there?
Hi, Josh, this is Joy. I had a question earlier about any advice you might have had for multi-sided platforms, multi-sided marketplaces, because I have a platform that has service providers and the consumer. So how do I appease to both of those groups when doing a product roadmap?
Well, it's an interesting question, Joy, because I think about my time at RetailMeNot, and it was different than Nordstrom in that we, many of you probably aren't familiar with RetailMeNot, but it's basically helping customers save on a daily basis, things like cash back, things like coupons, and allowing customers to save a few bucks with their purchases on a day-to-day basis. And how I think this is relevant is we had a sales force, Joy, and we worked directly with retailers and restaurants. So our sales force would go out to Macy's, or they would go out to Burger King, and they would try to cut a deal for a discount package. Macy's will kick in 3% cash back, RetailMeNot will kick in 3% cash back, and we'll offer that customer a little bit of a savings on their purchase on a day-to-day basis. And so the other side of the coin is just, as you said, kind of the customer-facing experiences. And generally speaking, I think my personal preference with sort of two-sided marketplaces is a little bit more the Amazon approach, where you have a team that is focused on the seller experience, and then you have a team really focused on the consumer experience. And obviously there's some interplay. But I think when you try to take that two-sided marketplace and say, I've got one bucket of capacity, we've got 6 engineers that can work on the total portfolio, it's pretty hard to balance that. And so my belief is try to sort of partition it out a bit, and make sure there's some dedicated resource for both the consumer side of the marketplace and for, in the case of if you're Amazon, the merchant side of the marketplace, or if you're RetailMeNot, the retailer side of the marketplace.
Great, thank you. That's helpful. Yes,
did I sort of answer that?
Yes, thank you.
Hey, Josh,
great.
this is. Oh, sorry.
We'll take a last question. Go ahead, Pratik.
Oh, awesome. Too much pressure.
No, go for it.
So how can individual product managers, like individual contributor product managers, think about product strategy? And just kind of going with the example you had given, like let's say you have a product manager who's responsible for the product detail page. Do they also, would you expect them to use a similar framework that you described as mission, themes, and roadmap? Because for me, it's really hard to think about, like, what's the mission of a product detail page? I feel like mission is at a higher level, like what's the mission of Nordstrom, as opposed to what's the mission of a product detail page? Does that make sense?
No, it's a great question. And I think what we tried to do, and I continue to try to do, is I think the simplicity of those 4 themes that we went through, how do we inspire, how do we kind of personalize, how do we connect people to physical and digital experiences, and just how do we make it fast and easy? Those 4 themes, I think generally when you're looking at a digital commerce experience, all of those are somewhat universal. And when I say universal, not necessarily for every customer, okay? So we really started to think about our experience in sort of a forked way. And what I mean by that is there were returning or best customers, and then there were new customers. And for new customers with that product details page, we were very much focused on the fast and easy part of it, not the inspiration and personalization part of it, or necessarily the connection part. And so I think what it's important to do, and it's, from my perspective, not terribly hard to do, because, for those of y'all that are on the phone, on the call here, I should say, that are working on digital commerce experiences, most of these things hold some applicability. And so when you're looking at your product details page roadmap, trying to create that roadmap, I think thinking about it in terms of how does it accrue to making it easy, to personalizing, and whatever the objective is. And maybe you're taking a couple of sprints, or you're taking a quarter, and you're very focused on new customer experiences. And you're orienting your roadmap towards what's going to take friction out of that experience for new customers, because they are spearfishing, as opposed to, maybe the next quarter you're really focused on those best customers and returning experiences. And it's all about personalization and driving how you can improve and better personalize that experience. And so we literally would take that same framework, and if you were the product manager that was responsible for the homepage, or for all of our recommendations, or the checkout experience, you'd use that same framework. And you know, it may be weighted in slightly different ways. You know, the checkout experience is very much about friction. It's not so much about inspiration typically. So, you know, there's balance and weighting for each product manager and sort of where you are in the funnel, but all four of those themes generally are applicable. Hopefully that made sense.
Pratik, thanks for the question, and Josh. Yeah, I just want to thank you for being with us here and being a part of our monthly speaker series in August. It was great having you. And I think Josh also shared his contact information on that intro slide. So feel free to connect with Josh. I'm going to turn it back to Andy. We're going to also, after Andy closes and thanks our sponsors, we're going to keep it open for 15 more minutes for people who want to you know, stay and socialize. Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, as James said, we're going to leave this open. So if you got a few more minutes, if you want to promote something you're working on, if you need beta testers for something, want to tell people to connect with you on LinkedIn, that's something we were doing in our speaker series events when we all got to hang out in person and haven't done the last 5-6 months. So we want to bring that back. So thanks again to Josh. Thanks everyone for being here. Thanks for everyone who was willing to ask questions. I know this is new, and thanks for sticking with us or trying out the breakout rooms. You know, we'll send the survey afterwards. Your feedback's appreciated. Thanks again to our sponsors at Vonage APIs and Amplitude. So as I said, the floor is your guys now. We'll leave it open for about 15 more minutes. If you want to hang out, if you want to shout out what you're doing, whatever that is, this is your guys' opportunity to hype up something you're doing and to get other people excited about it, get feedback on it, whatever it is. The floor is your guys. And like I said, thanks again to James for being a great co-host, and to Josh for this incredible presentation. I loved seeing the applause buttons getting hit at the end there. That was a fun new part from doing the webinar with the meeting format, which was great. So thanks again to everybody, and I'll turn the floor over to you guys for your shout outs.
Great. As Andy said, you know, shout outs could be you're searching for a job. It could be your hiring manager, you're looking for a job. It could be anything interesting that you want to kind of share. So feel free to do that. You know, floor is open. If we don't have anybody, that's fine too. But again, we open that up so that you know, people can share things in the audience.
Nobody has anything. I'm wondering, can we still use this time for a bit of Q&A with Josh?
Yeah, sure. Go for it.
I would keep it low priority. If somebody has a shout out, I'll give them.
Yeah. Let's, you know, that's great, Pratik. Let's just first check. Does anybody have a shout out that they want to share? If great, you know, we'll pause here and then we'll circle back to Pratik. If not, that's fine too. But is there anybody out there, either in chat or who wants to come on live and share something?
I can do a quick shout out. So my name is Oliver. Hello, everyone. I'm currently participating at the master program of product management at CMU, and I'll be graduating by the end of this year. So I'm actually in an active recruitment phase right now. I'm hoping to sort of meet more product managers, just to work at a company that focuses on e-commerce or in entertainment media. So if anyone has any position open, I'd love to talk to you more about my qualifications, and hope to talk to all of you. Thank you.
That's awesome, Oliver. Thanks for sharing that. I know we met during the breakout. Certainly, I'd love to connect with you, and let's make sure we do that. And if there are other people out there who, you know, is in the e-commerce space, definitely connect with Oliver on LinkedIn.
Thank you. Very appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Oliver. Was there somebody else?
I'll just say I'll encourage Oliver to join more of our webinars. We're going to keep testing out this format. So as you get that chance to join some more of the breakout rooms ahead of time and do the shout outs, hopefully you'll make some meaningful connections, and or congrats on being close to graduation.
Thank you very much. I definitely will.
Yeah, the other thing I would say, Oliver, I'll give a plug for our website. There's a great profile search that you may see there on our website. You can search for you know, people who've created a profile on our platform, and, you know, be able to maybe find people if there's a specific area of interest. So feel free to do that as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. Great. Okay, anybody else? Don't be shy. We're here to help. Well, yeah, Sherry, will you share the products, the website? Yes, it's I'll just send it here. It's productsthatcount.com. And so I'll also share that in the chat, or if somebody else could share that in the chat, maybe Mark, you could do that. That would be great. Yeah, there's all kinds of resources out there. And like I said, you have the option to create your own profile. It authenticates with LinkedIn. So there, you know, there's nothing more than that. You can kind of share what your superpowers are and other things about you. But as shared out, the productsthatcount.com resources page, wow, you're going to find a treasure trove of articles, podcasts, and videos from people. And if you hear them talk and you see C and VP level people that have interest, you know, that's also maybe, Oliver, a path where you might want to reach out to someone based upon an article they've written, a blog that they've perhaps authored, or a podcast or video. Yes,
Absolutely.
superpowers, love that. Yes, you can go ahead and create your superpowers on our website. So that's awesome.
Yeah, and just to add, I know all of our speakers usually are happy to connect on LinkedIn. So
they are.
If you shoot them a message, and you're like, hey, I wasn't in the webinar, but I just watched the presentation. It was awesome. You know, do you have any advice? Or, you know, you're here now, you know how to do networking. So I have faith that you'll be able to connect with them if you find some of those presentations helpful.
Dinosaurs like Josh and I know a lot of people are. So feel free to reach out.
Absolutely.
Okay. Even though we're here in Austin, we still have presence in the West Coast. Well, good. Pratik, do you want to go ahead and was there somebody else who wanted to share something? Dinosaurs are cool. Thank you, Sherry.
Yeah, Pratik, go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah,
and also, Josh, I think a great presentation. It's definitely helpful to kind of think about, you know, strategy and get to hear that directly from people who've led, you know, product strategy at companies. So as a kind of going back to the question I'd asked earlier, as an individual contributor, you know, like looking to kind of grow into some of that leadership and management position, I feel like at that level, when you're in leadership and, you know, when you're kind of running a product team, it's a lot about strategy, you know, like to your point, like setting the strategy for the product. Whereas at the individual contributor level, it's oftentimes it's executing against that strategy, you know, that's been set by the leaders. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to like get a better sense of like, how do you bridge that gap? Like for someone who is an individual contributor looking to move into that leadership capability, how do you go about, you know, gathering those skills and then, you know, trying to like making that leap?
Yeah, it's, you know, it's an interesting question. I mean, I've always sort of, I've kind of had this belief that the role of product, James and other people can weigh in on this, but there's often, besides being responsible for the actual product experience, you know, on a product details page, to stay with that example, a lot of, I think what good product people do is they sort of facilitate, lead, drive product development teams. And, you know, for people generally who are, you know, kind of a little bit earlier in their journey, kind of doing individual contributor roles, I think the folks usually that sort of move into, you know, managing small teams or even managing larger teams are the people that are actually able to take the collective, meaning take that product development team and get them to move, you know, for lack of a better term. And when I say move, what I'm talking about is getting shit done. Forgive me, I swear a lot, okay? And so, you know, how you, I think, show that you can get stuff done at the end of the day is being a little bit of a hard driver at the end of the day with the team. If you have a great vision, if you have a plan for the product and it seems compelling and it seems rational, getting engineering, getting data science, getting UX, getting whoever else sort of engaged, and as I like to say, trying to drive accountability. One of the unfortunate parts of, I would say, my experience in software development, James can probably speak to this as well. At Microsoft, we were probably both part of what I like to call some boondoggles, some things where nothing much was delivered. People had good intentions, but the team just didn't get it done for one reason or another. And so I always kind of come back to, good product managers are really able to kind of get the team motivated, that product development team, get them moving down the path and feeling accountability for the roadmap and the strategy. We said we're going to ship this in the sprint. Well, let's ship it. Let's do it, over the course of the quarter, et cetera. So I think it's my way of saying, don't bear witness, lead, because usually the team is looking for product to lead. Typically, that's our role. Not always, but typically. James, chime in if I
know. I was gonna say. I would probably say something really, really, very, very similar. Maybe particularly, I'll give you a really, really quick example. When I first came to Microsoft, I was in IT. That's where Josh and I met each other. I was in IC, and I remember going and having a meeting with our VP of IT. And like, yeah, I had the same question. Hey, how do I be a director? How do I lead? And she said, just what Josh said, lead with kind of indirect influence and lead with influence, because that's a lot harder than saying, hey, I'm the leader of the team, rah, rah, rah. And I got an opportunity very similar to what Josh said, where I was an IC and we had a platform called our Partner Velocity platform, which was how we engage with partners. And it's clear that every one of those teams were doing their own thing. And it was for no reason. I said, well, why do we do it that way? And there was no good answer. And as Josh said, it was like, how do you bring together, even though you don't run those teams, but there's an opportunity to even create a mission and inspiration for, let's say, the platform that you're working on. And then you bring those people together and lead. And so when people see you in those kind of limelights of leading, that's where the opportunities, I believe, kind of come to you. Do you have to have the core product management expertise? Sure. But in many cases, as Josh said, you're acting as an integrator, right? Across teams, across disciplines. And for people who see that it's more than just the hard skills, but a lot of the soft skills around leading and leading by influence, I think is where you get almost an opportunity to kind of practice developing some of those strategy type skills. Maybe they're not at, let's say, Josh's level as a CPO, but they certainly can have that almost same opportunity at maybe lower levels of maybe scope.
Awesome, that's really helpful. And I noticed there were some useful comments in the chat also about influencing without authority.
I think too, Pratik, someone once said to me, I still use this today, your plan is your shield. And I think if you, as a product leader, bring a plan to the table, it's not always going to be perfect, but I think your engineers, your data scientists, your designers, your various stakeholders are going to appreciate the rigor and the effort that you put into building that plan with them collaboratively. It should be a collaborative exercise, but you should be the straw that stirs the drink. I couldn't say it. That's what I was trying to say. Sorry. But I think if you do that, it's a way to sort of bring a team together, get them motivated. It's not just like, well, we've kind of got this roadmap and 5 things that some senior person told us to do. Kind of take it, make it your own and run with it and get the team involved. And I think when that plan's there, the team will rally around it. And even I think management, will often rally around it. They'll appreciate the effort and the energy that went into building a thoughtful plan that the team's trying to execute against.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, that's really helpful.
Well, great. Well, I know we're about 15 minutes after the half hour. I really want to thank everybody who came today for the pre-event, certainly for Josh's talk. Josh, I loved it, and really this kind of post-event. As Andy said, we're going to be sending out feedback forms. This is the first time we did it in this more kind of live interactive format. I loved it, but again, you're our audience. We'd love to get your feedback on some things, whether it worked for you, some other things that you would suggest. And we'll be back in a month, and I look forward to seeing everybody at our next event here in Austin. Thanks everybody for joining.
Yeah, thanks everyone. I know seeing you guys interacting with each other in the chat is going to power me through the rest of the day. That's great to see you. We loved it. So thanks again to everybody, and have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, have a great rest of the day. Thanks everybody.